Okay, I've got 6:30 City Hall ready to go. Dave or Lita?
I'm just about to start the webinar.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I'm here. I think everybody's ready.
I'll give Lita just a second to start that webinar.
It is started.
Great, thank you, Lita. Okay, welcome everyone to the City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. Madam City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Christy Malchow.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kaylee Clark.
Present.
Councilmember Karen Moran. Councilmember Karen Howe.
Present.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Madam City Clerk, we do have a quorum. Our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Lamb, would you lead us in that, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. So I would entertain a motion on the agenda, but one item of note, staff said that they are not ready to do item number 9, which is the review of legal contracts. So if when you make your motion, if you would please remove item 9.
I move that we remove item 9 from our agenda tonight.
So will you make a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of 9? That way we get the whole agenda.
Hey, I approve. It would be delightful if we could approve the entire agenda except for item 9, which I would love to remove.
I second that.
Great, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Great. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 5-0, the agenda is approved. Next, we will move to public comment, and pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Proclamation 20-28, the city is unable to provide an in-person location for this evening's meeting. The public is still able to attend. The meetings are accessible to the public, and public comment is able to be submitted. Written comment is accepted up until 5 p.m. the day of the meeting. Should you want to submit comment for a subsequent meeting, you may do so by emailing the city clerk, lhashi@sammamish.us, and the city council at citycouncil@sammamish.us. Verbal comment, if you are joining via Zoom and you'd like to give formal comment, the city clerk will advise you on how to, when your turn is up. And then information on how to join is listed under the meeting accessibility at the top of our agenda. Up to 3 minutes of verbal public comment may be provided per person live during the meeting. During public comment, the city clerk will ask attendees to press the raise hand button if they wish to give comment. If joining the meeting by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. When it's your turn to speak, the clerk will unmute you and will give you the ability to turn on your webcam camera if you desire. You'll be notified when you have 15 seconds remaining to wrap up your comments, after which you will be muted at the end of the 3-minute comment period. Madam City Clerk, do we have anyone waiting to give public comments?
If you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand now. I currently see 3 hands raised, and I will transfer them to a panelist as they are in order here. Carrie Bosworth.
Hi, City Council and staff. On the January 4th meeting, I listened to you all have a very robust discussion about the King County Sheriff's Office lease agreement. The agenda packet for this item had over 52 pages of detail. The facts and figures seemed to flow like butter. The topic after that, the contract amendment for Eglick, and Whited was like night and day. The event agenda packet was 3 pages. A direct question was asked by Council Member Lamb, what is our running total? The question was not directly answered. We learned in that discussion that since April 2020, the authorized amount was $799,999,000. And for October of last year, we owe about $40,000. We're short about $399. And then for the last 2 months, we anticipate $15,000 that we owe. So if we are to assume, it seems like we are to assume to date, we have spent $815,000 in this effort. And folks are asking for authorization for $250,000 more. It was agreed that more detail would come in 8 days, and that may or may not have happened for you guys. It was not on the agenda last week, and it looks like it just got pulled from this week's agenda. I understand that the money is for legal services, and you might not be able to talk at length about that, but council and staff should know at their fingertips how much has been spent, and a bit more transparency and information to the public would be appreciated. We don't hear much about the CARES and ARPA funding either. That isn't related to pending litigation. So my question is, why on some topics are we so on the ball, like the King County Sheriff's Office lease agreement, but on other topics like legal fees related to Eglick and Whited and other large sums related to CARES and ARPA, the details are just not there or easily explained? We would love to see more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the next caller is already available, Ramiro Valderrama.
Thank you. Former Deputy Mayor Ramiro Valderrama. There continues to appear to be no end of sight to the ethical and potential legal concerns regarding our city leadership. Tonight, you have on the agenda an executive session which alludes to the city manager, who had asked for a public hearing. So hopefully we will find out more about that. We have asked that citizens, as well as other institutions, including the Seattle Times, for the full unredacted report paid for by public funds and included 4 attorneys, including 1 investigator into it. Additionally, we should be looking at the accountability and holding to the same standards and ethics of our leadership and our council. A number of these continue to come out and have been documented in prior public comment, including unprecedented, unethical, and illegal acts, including where citizens have come forward and said that they have shared from council members, they've shared confidential data with them. That has also been shown in public records information. There's also been council members being forced to sign non-disclosure agreements that have been provided to this council. That's unprecedented and unethical. There have been council members who have been kicked out of executive session for not signing those agreements out there. And then furthermore, we have the case that was raised earlier of the mayor kicking out those people and denying legal guidance to council members on the non-disclosure. All of those unprecedented. Additionally, there is now evidence that council members have been using other channels, including WhatsApp. They've also been using Signal, Telegram to communicate with citizens on citizens' business in direct violation of state law, as well as the city code of conduct on public records and making public records available. Public records requests have been put in for that information. We expect to see those fully divulged by all the council members that have been in there. You have a whole slew of issues that are now out there that require this council morally and ethically to act. 5 years ago or so, Mayor Butler of Issaquah cited publicly that he had hoped that Issaquah could be seen like Sammamish at half their size to have the weight and seriousness that we were taking. Since then, we became known as the Do Nothing Council, the Dysfunctional Council, the Chaos Council. Now we've gone into where there's accusations and proof being cited of unethical actions, state actions against the law out there.
15 seconds.
This has got to end now. The council members are new here. You're held to your oath to the citizens that you need to bring accountability and a higher level of standards of ethics here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now unmute the next caller.
Hi, this is
Mary Richter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is there any opportunity to turn my camera on? I only see a mute button.
Madam City Clerk, does the speaker have an opportunity to turn her camera on?
Yes, I'm looking for that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Do you have her as a panelist? One moment, please.
So it says join as a panelist.
You should be able to turn on your camera now.
There, awesome. My name's Mary Richter. I've lived in Sammamish for 21 years. First wanted to say in my area where I live off Lewis Thompson Road, I've noticed that the survey for the Lewis Thompson Tightline project started about a week or so ago, and it's ongoing, which is one of the reasons it's so urgently that I talk with you today. Behind me is a picture of flooding. I did send in a 30-slide PowerPoint to give you the history and the background of the area. This is actually the same amount of water in the same place that caused the landslide in 2015 in November on a Sunday, which cost about 1.2, almost $1.3 million to repair and took 3 years. Gladly, it didn't occur this time because some of the fixes are pushing the water more south, but we do have flooding that can still occur over the landslide hazard area, even though there's a drain grate there, which Christy Malchow as mayor deputy was instrumental in helping get that put in, but it still goes over a very steep slope there that's over 50 feet in elevation, high above Zaccoos Creek directly, and then it goes under the curves, which are kind of a blind corner people who go by there. So I also turned around when I saw this, I started photographing and I walked up the street and you could see that the flows came not from just to 10th Place Southeast where this is pictured, but the next road up, which is to 11th Place Southeast. And that's just before 212th Avenue Southeast, which is actually at the top of Lewis Thompson Road and where the wetlands for Zaccoos Creek begin and is the main stem and headwaters of Zaccoos Creek. So my suggestion to you tonight is while the survey is currently going on, I would hope that you would be interested in extending this, at least the survey, so that the city staff would have the information they need to be able to consider any fixes here, because there is flooding going on. There are 25 homes on 211th Place Southeast that put their water either directly or indirectly into the ditch, and that comes off. I gave you the Zaccoos Basin plan that says those are undersized culverts and they will overflow for at least 25 and 100-year storms. And we didn't even have that. We had snow, which melted over a couple weeks, and then rainfall. So I really would like to have that looked at. I know it's not on your agenda for tonight. I've also seen past meeting in past years, because I've been speaking since 2015, where council had something brought up. They talked about it, and if they were interested, they could literally give a head nod or direction to council to go ahead and do that. I do believe that the cost to extend the survey is under the $50,000 city manager's signature limit, but in full transparency, I wanted you, the council, and people to be able to see the flooding that's going on in this important project. We don't want to have another landslide. And I had also invited council member Karen Howe out to see it with my
15 seconds.
Yesterday, and I thank her for her time. So please look at it. Please consider and please try to do something tonight, because in 2 weeks, I don't think the survey is going on anymore. Thank you.
Mary, could I ask just a quick question? It has to do with the survey. If the council were to go ahead and extend it, for example, are there any extra benefits we would derive from that?
Yes, if you're not looking above 210th, you're missing the opportunity to use the roadside ditch there, which really isn't used right now. And I think it's a great detention mechanism. So it would help with overflows. It would help with a water quality opportunity for Zaccoos Creek. It would give detention, because the biggest problem is when there's big rains or long-term rains, you just get a ton of water that gushes down, and that actually goes and erodes and scours Zaccoos Creek. And it also makes it safer for people and bus stops.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Victor.
We have 2 additional callers. I will transfer the next caller. Paul Stickney.
Good evening, Council. It's Paul Stickney, Sammamish here. Hope you're all having a great evening on the 18th of January. I sent in some fairly comprehensive comments today on your comprehensive plan, a little play on words. I'm not going to go over all those, but would like to invite any of you that would like to reach out and chat with me about that. I have a lot of experience in this, and I think it's an awesome topic that basically affects everything. But would just like you to consider some of the notations, comments, and questions that I submitted today with highlights, either tonight and or during the comprehensive plan process, and to adapt and change the RFP as needed, when needed, so we get the very best outcome. Just a couple of specifics only from the information turned in today. 75 of the council packet, it talks about providing creative and unique approaches to comprehensive planning. It would be really interesting to see a few examples of what that means specifically for Sammamish, because maybe not everybody's on the same page as to what that means. I think that would be a good thing to explain. Something else that's on page 75 in the middle under proposed approach talks about requiring the comp plan to comply with the GMA as well as being responsive to the community vision. But it talks about focusing on those 2 things. I think there's a whole lot more to a comp plan. Those 2 things are huge, but there's a whole lot more. I would just suggest not having that language in that limits that. On page 76, a couple items. In the middle of the page, under proposed approach, it talks about innovative and unique in responding to the needs, opportunities, and challenges in Sammamish. I think it would be really important to clearly define those terms, because different people may have different opinions on what that means. And the last thing is somewhat in sync with that. But on the same page, on page number 76, it says to have public participation while addressing the unique needs of Sammamish community members. I think that should be equally, spelled out as to what that means in general. The comp plan is huge. It's overarching.
15 seconds.
But what's underarching is the deeper dive on what direction our community wants to go. I've sent some information on that. I'm going to reach out to each of you and talk about how to move that forward in a way to see how you feel about it. Have a good evening, and thanks for letting me.
Thank you.
We have one final caller. Pam Stewart.
Hello. Good evening, City Council. Pam Stewart here, former City Council member. Thank you all for being here. I have a couple of requests. One is to reiterate the desire for more transparency. The question around legal contracts and legal fees, particularly with Eglick and Whitted, has been going on for many months. I believe it was in the summer of last year when I first made those inquiries. So it is a little bit disheartening that that information has not been made available to the public. The other request I would like to make along the lines of transparency is that the council look at potentially assigning more staff or recommending that more staff be assigned to process public records requests. The delay on public records requests now has become almost absurd. And I don't think that that is in the proper spirit of transparency. And I know at least Mayor Malchow, I know that transparency has always been an important thing for you. I know when I first joined the council, that was something you were very good at in terms of making sure that if we discussed a topic, that you would make sure you got some clarification to those watching from home. And I think that is really important. The third thing is I would love to see a little bit more structure in the meetings. For instance, if Councilmember Moran isn't here tonight, is it an excused absence? Is she coming late? For those watching at home, because it is remote, if you are calling into the Zoom meeting, if people don't have their cameras on, you don't always know if they're in attendance and you're just not seeing them. So it kind of depends on how things are being viewed. So again, it's not transparent to the public what's happening there. And finally, I would like to request that, and I'm happy to hear, Councilmember Howe, that you met with Mary Wichter. Mary has done some great work over the years in diving into the stormwater code and the stormwater issues. And so I want to thank her for her continued diligence on that and appreciate you guys taking the time to hear her out. She has been a really excellent volunteer, kind of an unsung hero volunteer, because it's not in a formal volunteer capacity, but to really provide that information. So thank you to Mary Wichter for doing that. But please, council, do provide a lot more transparency to the public. It's so important, and especially in today's world where I think there's a lot of mistrust with the government, between the government and the people, and you're in a position to really be able to heal that and provide information to the people so they don't have to feel like they have cause to mistrust anyone. Thank you and have a great meeting.
Thank you.
That completes public comment for tonight.
Great, thank you. Former Councilmember Stewart brought up something that I'd already kind of pecked down, which is we are missing Councilmember Moran. Our council rules do specify that if you're going to be absent, you need to let someone know. Specifically, it does, I think it states the mayor. I'm not looking at our council rules right now. I have not been made aware that she was going to be absent. I don't know if she's planning to attend. Someone else knows why she is not here. We'd either need a motion to excuse her on that, or it would be an unexcused absence. Has anyone heard from Councilmember Moran? Okay. Then we would move on to consent, and I would entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
I move to accept the consent calendar for January 18th, 2022.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? 5-0, the consent is passed. Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. Next item is presentation. This is the Sammamish Youth Board letter regarding the removal of Lower Snake River Dam. I believe I'm turning this over to Anjali Meyer.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, City Council. Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities. Your next topic is from the Sammamish Youth Board, and a staff on the recreation team serves as the staff liaison for the Youth Board. So I will be handing this topic off to Chris Jordan, our Recreation and Cultural Services Manager, to introduce. You're muted, Chris.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Anjali, and good evening, Council. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce some of our Youth Board leadership to present this topic this evening. I wanted to give some background on the Youth Board leadership, which has 45 members for 2021 and 2022 school year with leadership board of 6 members. The Youth Board has been busy this past 4 months by doing a Youth Board retreat as a restoration event at East Sammamish Park, partnered with the city to offer trunk or treat, which most all the volunteers were Youth Board members, partnered with the Issaquah Youth Board to offer a virtual career panel with presenters from biotechnology, medicine, business, and computer science. With the Youth Board members serving 1-year terms and appointed by the council, the Youth Board wanted to bring this topic to council to seek approval to allow the Youth Board to sign off on the letter pertaining to this topic. Since September, and this year in particular, this leadership board took initiative to look at topics that just don't affect Sammamish community only, but broader issues in the state too. Sammamish Youth Board has written a letter indicating support for the regional movement to remove the 4 lower Snake River dams in the southeastern Washington based on studies, data, and multiple perspectives shared by different groups. I would like now to pass over to Manit, the chair of the youth board, to give his detailed presentation.
Thanks, Chris. Before we hop into the presentation, I just want to go around and give everyone from the Sammamish Youth Board here today a chance to introduce themselves. So my name is Manit Goyal. I am the chair of the Sammamish Youth Board this year. Ainsley, you want to go ahead?
Hi, as Manit said, I'm Ainsley and I'm the co-chair of the Sammamish Youth Board.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hong Ning. I'm the community service liaison of the Sammamish Youth Board.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So as Chris said, I'm Manit. I'm here as the chair of the Sammamish Youth Board, speaking on behalf of the Sammamish Youth Board as well as my fellow officers here on the call to discuss an original letter that we have drafted up and intend to officially sign off on as a board, discussing the removal of the 4 lower Snake River dams in southeastern Washington in order to restore wild salmon migration routes throughout the Pacific Northwest. So we're looking for City Council approval for the Sammamish Youth Board to officially sign onto an original letter advocating for the removal and replacement of the 4 dams on the lower Snake River in southeastern Washington. So we're going to go into some of the data behind this, some of the studies we've used in establishing this viewpoint, and why this is something that the Sammamish Youth Board is getting involved in, even though it might seem like we're on the other side of the state, right? So here is a map of Washington and a little bit of Oregon and Idaho. And as you can see, the Columbia River is one of the most recognizable features on the map, marking the southern boundary of Washington. If you follow that east to the right of my screen, you can see another river called the Snake River, which connects to the Columbia River before opening out into the Pacific. So the Snake River is a river that comes from all the way in inland Idaho and is where a lot of wild salmon, especially wild Chinook salmon in the Pacific Northwest, spawn before migrating down to the Columbia River and out to the Pacific and returning annually to respawn. On the portion of the Snake River which connects to the Columbia River in southeastern Washington, there are 4 dams in particular that we're focusing on: Ice Harbor Dam, Lower Monumental Dam, Little Goose Dam, and Lower Granite Dam, because these 4 dams have a disproportionate impact on obstructing wild salmon migration routes. We're advocating for the removal and replacement of the clean energy generated by these 4 dams. So what's the issue at hand here? What's the issue we're focusing on? Well, as mentioned, the main issue because of these dams is that salmon can't migrate back and forth. In a salmon life cycle, they spawn inland, in this case in inland Idaho at the beginning of the Snake River. And then as they mature, they migrate out to the Columbia River and out into the saltwater Pacific. However, when they need to respawn, they need to migrate all the way back through the Columbia River, up through the Snake River, and back to their spawning grounds in order to replenish the next generation. These 4 dams in particular, as well as other dams in the region, have made it increasingly difficult for salmon to go, first of all, as adults out to the Pacific Ocean, and also returning inland to respawn. Because of these dams, there is a very low survival rate in this region for salmon, specifically on the Snake River, trying to migrate back and forth. Now, because of the salmon migration routes getting obstructed, this also leads to a bunch of other impacts. Notably, it disproportionately impacts indigenous communities across the Columbia Basin, so not only in Washington, but also in Idaho and Oregon. And it's in violation of treaties across the Northwest, including fishing rights treaties, because as these salmon populations decline, salmon are very integral to a lot of Columbia Basin indigenous communities. And they are also, if we as residents of Washington State, as residents of the United States, fail to take down these dams and continue to allow these salmon populations to decline rapidly as a result, it is violating fishing treaties across the Northwest. This is also a major cause for southern resident orca decline. As some of you may be familiar with, we have a local population of orcas, or killer whales, called the southern resident orcas, which are native to the Salish Sea region, so that includes, of course, the Puget Sound. There are only around 70-something individuals left in the southern resident orca population, and their diet consists solely of salmon, specifically Chinook salmon. A large part of their diet is specifically from Snake River salmon, and annually, These orca migrate down to the mouth of the Columbia River to feed on salmon originating from the Snake River and coming out through the Columbia River. So because these salmon are declining, it's also a major factor in southern resident orca population decline. Beyond just orca, salmon are a keystone species in the Pacific Northwest. This means that similarly to if you take out a keystone of a building, out of a building's foundation, oftentimes the whole building will collapse because of that one piece of the foundation. Similarly, salmon are crucial to many ecosystems in the Pacific Northwest. If you're to take a specific species of salmon out, or just salmon as a whole out of these ecosystems, whole ecosystems could collapse around it. And that's why it's especially important that we're preserving these salmon and preserving their natural populations. Finally, another thing we want to note is that the current dams, those 4 dams on the lower Snake River, are very inefficient energy producers as shown by multiple studies. So removing and replacing these dams with other clean energy sources, such as potentially solar, wind power, or even dams in other regions, this will not significantly increase household costs for taxpayers. So here's another map of the Columbia Basin. As you can see, it's zoomed out from that map of Washington we had earlier. The green areas on this map, the light green areas are Columbia Basin areas accessible to these salmon. As you can see, the blue line between Washington and Oregon is the Columbia River, and that merges with the Snake River that goes all the way down into Idaho. The light red areas are salmon habitats, so area that salmon could previously access that are blocked by dams. I'll take the time to note that this is not only depicting the impacts of the 4 lower Snake River dams. While those do have a disproportionate impact on the salmon, this map is specifically showing the impact of multiple dams across the area as marked out by these black bars. The dark red areas are current indigenous reservations in the area, such as the Yakima tribe, Warm Springs, Nez Perce, and the Umatilla. As you can see, many of them are very close to the Columbia and Snake River because, as mentioned earlier, a lot of their cultures are very heavily centered on salmon, and therefore they're going to be disproportionately impacted by salmon decline. So this is not only an environmental issue, it's not only an ecosystem issue, this is an environmental justice issue, and that's why we find it so important to take action for this. Here's another graph showing historical Chinook salmon abundance. So looking at this, the first thing that probably pops out to you is the enormous blue bar for the Columbia River. So that's the historical estimate for Chinook salmon abundance on the Columbia River. However, the red bar next to it shows that the Columbia River also has perhaps the largest decrease in Chinook salmon abundance from the historical estimate to the present run size. So this is just another graph showing just how important it is that the salmon in the Snake River are allowed to migrate out to the Columbia River and restore their natural populations in these areas. Another graph showing the wild spring summer Chinook salmon and summer steelhead % smolt to adult ratio versus the number of dams passed. So what is a smolt to adult ratio? This is a figure used in tracking salmon population because smolt is the name for basically baby salmon. So when the salmon are spawning, those are called smolts. This ratio, or abbreviated as SAR, is showing the percentage of smolts, so new salmon in each generation compared to the amount of returning adults. If this percentage is smaller, this means that salmon are unlikely to replenish their population with each coming generation. The main purpose of this graph is to show that the more dams that a specific group of salmon has to pass, the lower their SAR becomes. So because of that, as you can see, there's the 4% SAR line on this, the dotted blue line, which is the recovery goal for these salmon populations in order to recover their original population sizes. The dotted red line, the 2% SAR, is solely the amount of salmon needed to even replace the last generation, which is less than the recovery goal. And as you can see, the Snake River salmon, which have to pass a total of 8 dams, are not even meeting that 2% smolt to adult ratio that would allow for a replacement of the current generation. Finally, here's a graph showing just the general trend in salmon populations in the area, a wild Snake River adult spring/summer Chinook. So Chinook salmon are specifically the species that we're looking at here. And the general trend here is pretty obvious. It's just showing that on the left side, back in the 50s, 60s, these populations were pretty high, and they've declined rapidly since then. Just for context, the 4 lower Snake River dams that our letter is regarding, the 4 lower Snake River dams that we're focusing on, were put in place in the 70s. So as you can see, this is where salmon population started to take a big drop and got to these very low levels in the 80s and 90s and onward. So why does the SYB care? Why should Sammamish care about an issue that's all the way in southeastern Washington, on the other side of the state? As the previous maps have shown, this is an issue that affects the entire Pacific Northwest, not just any one region or any one corner of a state. Our responsibility as youth representatives of Sammamish goes beyond Sammamish itself. We must stand for the rights of people all over the Pacific Northwest, notably Northwest Indigenous tribes whose voices are often left out of these critical conversations, and tribes which are disproportionately impacted by this issue. In addition to this, all environmental ecological topics, whether that's salmon, whether that's orcas, whether that's even climate change outside of the scope of this letter, all these issues disproportionately affect younger generations, our own generation on the SYB, and therefore it's very important for us, for the Sammamish Youth Board in particular, to raise our voices concerning this issue. We want to have a seat at the table in these discussions. Youth perspectives have thus far been largely absent from discussion on this issue, especially in Washington. We're one of the first youth groups in the entire region, in the entire Pacific Northwest, to try and get our voices elevated on this issue. And that's why it's very important that we're able to set an example for other youth beyond Washington, even in Idaho and Oregon, to start youth discussion on this issue. Why did we choose to write a letter? Writing a letter and officially signing off on it as a board, so not just as individuals, but showing this collective solidarity as the Sammamish Youth Board. Writing this letter before sending it on to elected officials is the most feasible method in our current time frame to get youth voices to the state level regarding this issue. Our goal here is eventually, once we sign off on the letter, on this original letter, we do wish to show it to government representatives and political leaders in order to show them that this is an issue youth care about, this is an issue important to future voter bases, this is an issue that needs action to be taken on. So we figured that since we want to have something done before the end of the current SYB term, though ideally this will be an issue that we continue to pursue in the coming years, we do want to have something to show by the end of the year. And therefore, in our current time frame, we found that writing a letter is the most feasible way to get our voices heard. So here's a little bit about the letter itself. The purpose of the letter is to show support for dam removal and to demand guarantee of 100% or more clean energy replacement. We especially emphasize the second point of demanding a replacement of the clean energy produced by the dams because, of course, this is not an isolated issue of remove dams and everything will be better. The dams do produce clean hydroelectricity for our region. Clean in that they are a renewable energy resource, but it's not exactly clean because how can you have clean energy if it comes at the cost of a keystone species? Because of that, we do want to highlight our demand for a guarantee of 100% or more clean energy replacement once these dams are removed. The second main point in the letter is to emphasize solidarity with Northwest Indigenous communities disproportionately affected by these dams. Again, these are voices that are often left out of these discussions, even though they're bearing the brunt of the impact. And so we want to emphasize solidarity with them and show them that we're doing our best to get their voices heard. This letter also does not advocate for any specific removal or replacement plan for the dams. There are a couple plans floating around in different states around the area, but we went out of our way not to advocate for any specific removal and replacement plan because we want to avoid any political technicalities or issues we could run into there. Again, the main point of this letter is just to show political representatives and government leaders that this is something we need action to be taken on. Of course, there's probably more qualified people than us to figure out the best way to take that action. Finally, this letter is intended solely to demonstrate that this is an issue important to Washington youth and to pressure political leaders to take concrete actions. As I said, our goal is not to push for any specific plan for how to fund this or what should we replace the dams with. We just want action to be taken aligning with these demands. So here's our goals for what we want to do with the letter. First of all, we want to demonstrate Washington youth support for removal of the Lower Snake River dams with official Sammamish Youth Board backing. By having the Sammamish Youth Board officially sign off on this letter and be able to say that the Sammamish Youth Board supports this initiative, it shows a lot more solidarity and shows that we are coming together as a community to support other communities in the region. Second, we aim to obtain signatures from other regional youth boards and councils on a joint letter of commitment to the movement. So if possible, we do wish to connect with other regional youth boards or other groups in the area to make this more of a joint letter instead of just the Sammamish Youth Board. Of course, this will depend on multiple factors such as communication with these other boards, which is frankly out of our control, but we are actively working on connecting with other youth boards to make this a more solidified regional effort. Finally, once we've completed all these steps, we aim to publicly send signed letter to Washington state politicians indicating these support. Again, that's our end goal here. We want to get our voices heard where it matters. So this has been our timeline so far and what we expect to have in the coming months. So in November, at our official Sammamish Youth Board November meeting, we first motioned to send the letter to the City Council, which is why we're here today. And at that same meeting, we voted on the letter. I want to point out that this letter was unanimously approved by the Sammamish Youth Board, showing that this whole Sammamish Youth Board supports this initiative. This is something we all care very deeply about, and that's why we're putting so much time and so much effort into this to get our voices heard. Now that it's January, as you can tell, our current step is seeking approval from the City Council to officially sign off on this letter. And next steps are to, if possible, collect signatures and support from other regional boards, and eventually to send to Washington politicians before the end of the 2021 to 2022 SYB term in the spring. So just to summarize the presentation so far, why approve of this letter? Why approve on us officially signing off on this original letter? First of all, this initiative, and specifically the letter, was approved in an official Sammamish Youth Board vote, showing that this is something the Sammamish Youth Board does really care about. This is something that a lot of our members is very close to their heart. And I want to point out that according to the Sammamish City website, the mission of the Sammamish Youth Board is to unite youth, adults, and government to form a relationship that promotes equality and mutual respect. So we want to do our part in this. We want to have our voices heard so we can do our part in our community and in supporting other communities in the area. Second, again, we do not advocate for any specific proposal to remove and replace the dams, avoiding any political alignments or technicalities. This eliminates any potential issues we could have with the letter and getting it out. Finally, one of our main points is that the issue impacts the entire Pacific Northwest, economically, ecologically, and culturally. So this is not specific to any one location, such as Southeastern Washington, where the dams are. This is something that affects everybody in the region, and therefore we feel that it is our responsibility to do our part for the region. Are there any questions?
So I'm going to turn this over to the council for questions. Councilmember Howell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, thank you. Great job. And I appreciate the fact that it's extraordinarily difficult to get people to agree on anything, and to have all of you work together on this collective project. I congratulate you. The other thing I was going to bring up is that the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation have a youth leadership council. And so if you're looking for alignment, that would be an excellent place to start. They actually were asking for a video chat with Joe Biden in June. So you can look that up and see where there may be an opportunity for you guys to collaborate. The other thing I'll just mention quickly is that we did get public comment today on this, and they are opposed to your point of view. What I would urge you to do is to take a look at your statistics and ensure that you are in fact accurate. In a couple of places, the gentleman that gave the public comment was saying that he's seen these statistics before and has refuted them before. Just want to make sure that you're checking your sources and that you are actually going into people that do not agree with you, specifically do not agree with you, and working with them to see, is it just that we have different data sets that we're using, or is there really something that needs to be worked out between you? So those are my only comments, but thank you for your work.
Thanks. I think I'm the only other one with a hand up. Yeah, I really appreciate the youth board coming forward to council and engaging with council on this topic. I think, you know, our city council has been hyper-focused on our own salmon that are fighting for their survival here, which is the kokanee. And so we've put most of our time and energy into that salmon species just because they are on the brink of extinction as well. Similar to Councilmember Howe, I did note that some of the statistics in bullet points in there have alternate viewpoints. And I was just concerned that you know, one of the statements is that there are no fish that get up the dam, but that seems to be refuted with some other evidence that they are getting up the dam. I mean, I did some quick digging in 2017, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Fisheries. They noted that the dams are very close to achieving or have already achieved the juvenile dam passage survival objective of 96% for yearling Chinook salmon and steelhead migrants. So I think similar to Councilmember Howe, I think just kind of cross-checking different sources of information would be helpful. So to that end, I'm not supportive this evening of support for this. I think at some point in the future, if it's more balanced with the evidence and the data that's out there, we might be able to circle back. But Councilmember Lamb.
I just wanted to say that I applaud the Sammamish Youth Board for their efforts in taking part in something so important such as salmon recovery, and I applaud all youth that value social justice. This is a really complex topic, and it's a topic that that affects climate change. It affects renewable energy. It affects. It's a regional issue, and there's huge cost implications for this. I know Mayor Malchow has done a lot of work with kokanee salmon, and I think that's fantastic because it's here in Sammamish, and it shows that we can definitely affect salmon recovery on a local level. And I would encourage you to perhaps work with the mayor and see how she did her work. So with that, I motion to postpone this agenda item indefinitely.
Second. All right, motion on the table. Councilmember Lamb, did you want to speak to your motion at all, or is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion on the table is to postpone this indefinitely. All those in favor?
Do we have a second? Excuse me. Is there a second?
Yes, I seconded it.
Oh, you did?
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
I did, yes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and Lita, if you would, because Councilmember Moran just joined us, if you would note that in the minutes and then remove the...
Here much earlier than that, actually. She's got that in her minutes already.
Okay, wonderful. Just wanted to make sure it was noted. Okay, so that was a 5-1. So this will be tabled indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
So, and to the members of the youth board that came this evening and presented, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. It's great to see your faces. I wish we were in person and be able to see you. So thank you so much. All right, I gotta get back to my agenda here. All right, our next item is a proclamation. This is the School Choice Week proclamation. Councilmember Howe, would you mind reading the School Choice Week proclamation? And we've got you on mute, Karen.
Can we put that green? I just have to get to it here. I don't have it open right this second.
Sorry, I cut you off guard there. Not my intention.
In the wrong section, proclamation. There we go. It should happen. There we go. Sammamish, Washington Proclamation, National School Choice Week. Whereas all children in Sammamish should have access to the highest quality education possible. And whereas Sammamish recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in Sammamish to be successful adults. And whereas quality education is critically important to the economic viability of Sammamish. And whereas Sammamish is home to a multitude of high quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in the home. And whereas education variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community. And whereas Sammamish has many high quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children. And whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need of effective educational options. Now, therefore, you, Christy Malchow, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, do hereby recognize January 23rd through 29th, 2022 as National School Choice Week in Sammamish. and call on this observance to the attention of all citizens.
Thank you, Councilmember Howell. We have another proclamation. This one is for Black History Month. Councilmember Moran, would you mind reading that one?
Actually, I don't even have that stuff up.
Okay.
Why don't you have somebody who's got it up on their screen?
Sure. Councilmember Treen, do you have it?
Sammamish, Washington Proclamation, Black History Month, February 2022. The city of Sammamish remains committed to honoring diversity, equity, inclusion, and mutual respect as the fundamental principles of Black History Month and the core values of our community. And whereas Black History Week was initiated February 12th, 1926, to highlight the contributions and accomplishments made by the Black community and that had been omitted from history. And whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and established as Black History Month. And whereas the city of Sammamish is proud to honor the history, contributions, and achievements of the Black community locally, nationally, and globally, and whereas the contribution and presence of Black community is recognized as enhancing the quality of life in the city of Sammamish. And whereas Black History Month calls our community to take pause, to reflect on the past injustices inflicted on the Black community, and to pay tribute to the battles fought in the name of equity. And whereas Black History Month calls our community's attention to modern day racism, biases, and prejudices that negatively impact the livelihood of the Black community. And whereas Black History Month is a time for our community to look to the future to ensure inclusiveness and equity for all. And whereas the national theme for Black History Month in 2022 is Black health and wellness, and takes a look at how American healthcare can better serve the Black community. And whereas the city of Sammamish will dedicate the month of February to offering Black history information resources on the city's diversity, equity, and inclusion webpage. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor, Christy Malchow, on behalf of the city of Sammamish Council, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tree. Okay, our next item of business, they're all interconnected, which is the appointing of members to our commissions and boards. So council, just a quick question. We do have an executive session listed to review their qualifications. My question for council is, because Krista sent out that list already, is just to simply ask if council would like that executive session to discuss or not. If anyone wants it, it's fine. We can jump back there. If everyone's fine with the list, then we don't need to go back there.
We don't need an executive session.
Okay. All right, then we will skip that executive session. We will move to item 10, which is a resolution of the city of Sammamish appointing 4 members to the Arts Commission. And I would entertain a motion on that.
So moved.
If it can be read who the commissioners are and their positions, because not all of the commissions expire at the same time. So I think we need to say position 3. So that would be utilizing that list that Krista sent out earlier.
May I suggest that we share the screen so that we can read off of that? Okay, one moment, please.
Thanks so much. Okay, so if council can see that, and I don't know if there's any way to enlarge it. I don't know, it's pretty small on my screen. I don't know if anybody else can read it or not, but.
Okay, so motion to approve position 3 and Humes with for 131.26 with position to 131.26. Position 4, 131.26 is Whitney Hawker. Position 7, 131.24 is Shanna Kapoor. Let me go back to position 4, which is 13126 is Whitney Hawker. Position 7, 13124 is Shania Kapoor. Position 9, 13124. I don't want to do what I would do to that name, Prasad. And I apologize. So my motion to approve those for the Arts Commission.
Second. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on these? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Okay, we're going to move to item 11, which is appointing 5 members to the Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board. I would entertain a motion there.
Motion to approve.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Motion to approve Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board, with a board consisting of Bassam Bajani, 12/31/26, Delbert, and I'm killing these names. Please forgive me. 12/31/26, 12/31/26 to Thomas McGinnis, 12/31/26 to John Burdicken, and 12/31/26 to Ann Cruz.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, the motion passes. Okay, next is item 12. This is appointing 2 members to the Human Services Commission.
I motion to go ahead. Sorry, I keep talking over people. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kaylee.
Okay, I get the easy one. I motion to approve Human Services Commission position 4, 131/24 Mark Hellman, and position 7, 131/26 Joyce Bottenberg.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, we have appointed the members to the Human Services Commission. Okay, next item is Parks and Recreation Commission.
I move that we accept the recommendations here for Parks and Recreation Commission. Position 4, 131/26 Sid Gupta. Position 5, 131/26 Henry Klein. Position 6, 131/23 Melanie Kelsey. Position 7, 131/23 Ms. Dina Ann.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, we have appointed members to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Okay, last, Planning Commission.
I move to approve for Planning Commission position 6, January 31st, 2026, Mark Bauman, and for position 7, January 31st, 2026, Jerry Norman.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, we've appointed the planning commissioners. So congratulations to everyone that was just appointed to one of our commissions. All right, that was quick and easy. All right, we are moving on to our next item. This is a discussion of the comprehensive plan periodic update and request for proposal. I think I'm turning this over to David Pyle, Kelly Hildy, and Evan Fisher.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council, David Pyle, Department of Community Development. For this agenda item tonight, we have a presentation on the first major step in the comprehensive plan update process, which is issuance of an RFP for consultant support This is an informational presentation to the council just to make sure you're up to speed on what's going on with our comp plan update. And we will be asking the council to consider appointing 2 members of the council to serve on the consultant selection interview panel, where we will be interviewing finalist consultants for this work. I'll turn it over to Evan Fisher, Senior Management Analyst with the department, for a presentation, for an informational presentation on this RFP. Thank you, Evan.
Great, thanks, David, and thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, City Council. My name is Evan Fisher, and I'm a Senior Management Analyst with DCD. Tonight, I'm going to provide you an introductory overview on the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Review process, and I will also discuss the first step the City will be taking to begin the review, which is seeking a consultant to review and update the City's 2015 Comprehensive Plan. To start, I'd like to provide some brief background on what the Growth Management Act, or GMA, requires of the City. First, the GMA requires certain cities, towns, and counties to intentionally and carefully plan for population growth in a way that coordinates with neighboring jurisdictions and aligns with regional and statewide policies and goals. This planning is done through creating comprehensive plans. The GMA also requires jurisdictions periodically review and, if necessary, revise their comprehensive plans and associated development regulations. This periodic review cycle occurs every 8 years, with Sammamish last completing a review and update in 2015. Sammamish is required to complete its current review update by June 30th of 2024. It's important to note that the periodic review does not mandate a rewrite of the city's comprehensive plan, but instead requires a review of the existing plan to see what needs to be updated to ensure it complies with the GMA. Upon completing the 2024 review and update, the city's comp plan and associated policies and regulations must address state laws through the Washington Department of Commerce GMA periodic review checklist, align with the Puget Sound Regional Council regional growth strategy through their periodic review checklist, align with multi-county planning policies and Vision 2050, and respond to King County countywide planning policies. This slide provides a high-level overview of the review and update process. Completing the periodic review and updates is a multi-step, multi-year process that will begin in the next few months and take us through completion in June of 2024. The first steps of the process will be completing the DOC and PSRC checklist and conducting a gap analysis. The checklist and gap analysis will help us identify if our comprehensive plan and associated development regulations comply with state law and regional policies, or if there are sections that need to be updated. Next is developing and executing a public participation plan. This will engage and educate the community during the review and update process, and the feedback received will help us shape the language of any updates. Staff will review the results of the gap analysis and the feedback heard during the public participation plan with the City Council along the way. Once we understand what needs to be updated, a scope of work for completing these updates will be presented to and approved by the City Council. The scope of work will consider the results of the gap analysis, public feedback as part of the public participation plan, as well as the community visioning process. After the work plan is approved, we will move into drafting the update language, completing legislative review, finalizing and adopting the updates. It's worth noting here that the legislative review process will allow for continued public participation and engagement as language is being drafted and finalized. The city will also complete any required environmental review of the proposed updates as appropriate. Before any of this work can begin, however, the city must first go through the consultant procurement and selection process. The city will be issuing a request for proposal to seek a qualified consultant with experience and expertise in comprehensive planning that will develop and execute a coordinated approach for completing the steps listed above. The city has allocated $300,000 to begin this work. However, it is anticipated that additional budget will be requested as part of the 23-24 budget process. The total budget needed will be commensurate with the number of and the complexity of the updates being undertaken. The RFP outlines a high-level scope of work that will be refined with the consultant and as project phases are completed. The scope of work includes completing the DOC and PSRC checklist and gap analysis, assisting the city in coordinating with state, county, and regional authorities, as well as our tribal partners, developing and executing a public participation plan, developing and presenting a scope of work and budget for the city council approval, for completing the updates to the comprehensive plan and associated development regulations, drafting and finalizing those updates, assisting with certification, and completing environmental review as appropriate. Staff will be announcing this RFP this coming Friday, January 21st, with proposals due back to the city on February 25th. From there, the city will evaluate the proposals and invite shortlisted firms for an interview to be conducted on March 11th. The selected consultant will be notified on March 14th and a final contract being approved by the City Council on April 5th. That brings us to the question before the City Council this evening, which, as David stated, would the City Council like to nominate 2 council members to be a part of the finalist interviews on March 11th? And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Mayor Malchow, for discussions and any questions the council may have.
Thank you to both. Council, any questions, or is anyone interested in serving as a interview panelist? Councilmember Howe.
Be interested in serving on something like this. I just completed a process with King County for capacity building, and it's a great process, and I urge everybody to do it. But it's a lot of work also, but I would love to do it.
Great, thank you. Is there another council member that would like to participate?
I would.
Councilmember Moran, Councilmember Treen, your hand's up too.
Yep. I can't find my hand.
Yeah, I'd be interested in serving on the interviewing process for selecting the consultant to do the comp plan update.
Thank you. Councilmember Moran?
As would I.
Okay, so obviously there's interest from council to have at least a pair of panelists. So we need to narrow it down to 2, I'm guessing, based on what you're saying, unless we can have 3, which is not a quorum. I will ask staff before we try and figure out which 2 we move forward, unless we can have 3.
So David Pyle, Community Development. Because this is really a scoring exercise and does involve some conversation, we could take up to 3. As long as it wouldn't constitute a quorum or present a problem with public notification, et cetera, right? So we'd be happy to take 3. We really appreciate council interest in this topic. We're going to be working closely together on this for the next few years. So wanting to make sure to include the council early and have lots of check-ins with you on this project. So we definitely would be happy to have 3 of you.
Great, and that solves our problem. We don't need to, we can have all 3. So we'll have council members Moran, Howe, and Treen. Great. You guys need anything else from us on this RFP, or are we all good?
That's it. We just wanted to make sure to check in with you and provide a status and invite you to participate in the selection process. Thank you.
That's great. No, I appreciate the check-in on this. I think there'll be a lot of heightened interest within the community on the comprehensive plan. So kind of highlighting it along the way is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next item, business.
Mayor, I had a question.
Yes. Sorry, Councilmember Lim.
I had a question about the RFP. Is there, before it goes out, can we affect language that goes into it regarding diversity?
Sure. If you had a suggestion overall as to something that we should look for inclusion on, we'd be happy to take that and do a read through with an eye for some sort of language that you'd like to see added. We are on a pretty tight timeline to get this to publication and turned around. Being an administrative function of the city, we've put quite a bit of effort into it already. However, we're always open to suggestions and feedback on it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I see Councilmember Howe has her hand up too.
Yes. So does Councilmember Moran. I'm just not sure if it's still up or if she had another question.
No, that's okay.
Okay, Councilmember Howe.
Just very briefly, I think we can speed that up really quick because there's already existing language on the King County site. that we would pull directly potentially for this. That could be a real benefit. The other thing that I found too is that they actually have a wonderful site for actually pulling great talented people from different communities. That by just putting a couple of different filters in, you can get access to some wonderful consultants that from a population you may not be considering today. So it'll be fast. I promise. I'll make it fast for the auditions.
So to be clear, you will be sending over some suggestions via email, or
I'll give you suggested language embedded into your existing document, and just as a change. It'll be in a review in red, so it should be very easy, and you'll tell me if this creates problems.
And if you have any suggestions in terms of alternative places to post our advertisement, those are welcome as well.
Okay, great. I do. Thank you so much.
And Councilmember Lamb, will you be doing the same thing and providing feedback by way of email?
I can see what Councilmember Howe sends over just as a like FYI. I mean, I do have language, but I'll defer to Councilmember Howe for that.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. So now we'll move on to our next item, item 16, which is the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and Addendum. And I have Jeff Ellikish.
Lita, do you have Jeff on the line, or do you have Audrey? Okay.
Looks like Audrey just popped
Audrey
on.
is
So maybe
going
it's
to
Audrey.
address this for you. Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening. I'm Audrey Starcy, Deputy Public Works Director. I'm happy to introduce this evening the topic for you. So we will be discussing the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and the City Addendum. And here to speak on behalf of that effort, this is an introductory presentation, and Stephanie Sullivan, our Senior Stormwater Engineer, will be introducing this topic to you this evening. We'll be back lots of times this spring to discuss it. And myself and both our Senior Stormwater Program Manager, Toby Kanan, will be around for questions afterwards. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you, Audrey. Mr. City Manager, Madam Mayor, City Council, thanks for having me today. I'm actually looking for how to share my screen. I haven't done this on Zoom in this format before.
It should be at the bottom. It's the green arrow.
Oh, there it is. Perfect. Okay. Everyone can see that? Perfect. Okay. So I'm Stephanie Sullivan, Senior Stormwater Engineer with Public Works. Today, I'd like to introduce you to the project to adopt the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and City Addendum. So this presentation will discuss the proposed project, but will not quite go into the details on the upcoming changes. The project team is still in the early phase of the project. What we will provide is an introduction and the opportunity for questions. So after this presentation, our goal is that you will understand why we're updating the manual. I will also introduce you to the project team, go over the goals, discuss our approach, and finally review the schedule. So I'll start with the why behind this project. Stormwater regulations begin with the Clean Water Act. Administration of the Clean Water Act was given to the states to implement. So in Washington State, the Department of Ecology issues the city's municipal stormwater permit under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. The city's stormwater program is required to comply with the Western Washington Phase 2 municipal stormwater permit, which allows us to discharge to waters of the state, such as Lake Sammamish. The city is commonly referred to as a Phase 2 permittee. The stormwater permit is updated on a 5-year cycle. So currently it's 2019 to 2024. Because stormwater requirements are based on technical standards, this 5-year cycle enables us to keep our regulations up to date. The permit includes several sections of requirements, and this update is focused on Section 5, which is for controlling runoff from new and existing development. Currently, the city uses the Sammamish Development Code, the 2016 King County Surface Water Design Manual, and the city addendum to this 2016 manual to implement drainage requirements. The 2016 manual and the city addendum contain the requirements and standards for designing surface and stormwater management systems. And as part of the permit approval process, the city requires the construction of surface and stormwater management systems to mitigate the impacts of new development and redevelopment on natural and existing man-made drainage systems, which many of you are already familiar with. The manual regulates proposed projects through a combination of requirements, performance standards, and design standards. So these requirements are primarily enforced by the City Public Works Development Review Team in partnership with the Department of Community Development to implement the drainage review and approval of engineering plans and inspection of development projects during construction. The Public Works Stormwater Team is responsible for developing the requirements and standards and providing technical support for the drainage requirements. The permit does require adoption of these updates by June 30 of 2022. It also allows Phase 2 permittees, such as Sammamish, to adopt the regulations of a Phase 1 permittee to meet these requirements. So King County is a Phase 1 permittee, meaning their permit timeline is 1 year ahead of ours. And King County incorporated these changes by adopting the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual in July. So as project team, I'm going to be the project manager to oversee the effort. We've also hired AHBL as our consultant to assist us with this work. We don't have them here today, but they will be joining us in April when we come back for an update on our progress. AHBL was selected as the most qualified firm through a competitive selection process. They assisted the city also to develop our current addendum and adopt the 2016 manual. So they do have a lot of experience with the Sammamish specific requirements and are very familiar with the process. Primary oversight and guidance will be given by the Senior Stormwater Program Manager and Deputy Public Works Director. So distilling down the purpose of this project, our goal is to update our regulations to continue to comply with the city's stormwater permit. The adoption of the 2016 manual was a significant change to stormwater regulations. However, I would mostly characterize these updates as refining those previous changes, taking what we learned about what went well, what didn't go well over the last 5 years, and improving the regulations in response to those lessons. The city also did a significant amount of work on the addendum in 2016, where our requirements do go above and beyond the state requirements, and we intend to maintain those standards in this update. This project will update the Sammamish Development Code, previously known as Title 13 of the Sammamish Municipal Code, adopt the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual, and draft a city addendum to the 2021 manual, using our current addendum as a starting point. This project will provide opportunities to make improvements in the addendum based on our experiences as well with the current regulations over the last 5 years. It will also include updating tools and forms to make them Sammamish specific. The King County manual has obviously King County forms, so we'll improve on that. So our approach will include the following items, which will also be shown on a timeline in the next slide. Our initial outreach and draft changes will be based on a gap and opportunity analysis, comparing the current regulations and required changes, which AHBL is already working on. And they're also developing a public engagement plan. Based on the gap and opportunity analysis, we'll present findings to the Planning Commission, which will be an excellent opportunity for detailed review of the likely changes and initiating public engagement. Using the feedback from this meeting, we will prepare an initial draft of those proposed changes for the addendum and the code. We will work with the Planning Commission to finalize those updates and get the recommendation for presenting to City Council, to you. As work progresses, we will update you at a study session in April. And we may also conduct targeted outreach, which would be guided by the feedback we receive. After refining the draft updates, we would also conduct the SEPA process and submit for Department of Commerce review. And finally, we'll present the Planning Commission's recommendation to you at a regular meeting, which would include the public hearing and possible adoption of the new requirements, as early as June 7th, I think. We plan to complete this by mid-June to meet our permit date. So here's that timeline I was talking about. So today, January 18th, is the council meeting 1 shown on the left. AHBL, like I said, is developing that gap and opportunity analysis. And after staff review that analysis, the team will present findings at Planning Commission meeting 1, which will also kick off the public outreach, which is scheduled for February 17th. We'll begin drafting updates and host a virtual open house for the public. This date is not yet set, but it is planned to occur by the end of March, and targeted outreach is planned for April. Also in April, we'll work closely with the Planning Commission to respond to comments, refine changes, and obtain their recommendation. This is shown as Planning Commission meetings 2 and 3, which are scheduled for April 7th and April 21st. We also propose to brief City Council, shown as Council Meeting 2, which is set for April 12th. Finally, we'll take the Planning Commission recommendation to you in a study session scheduled for May 10th, shown as Council Meeting 3, and we would present final updates at City Council Meeting 4, which would be a regular meeting and public hearing scheduled for June 7th. So this timeline would allow the council the ability to adopt the new requirements if desired as early as June 7th, or to keep a public hearing open until June 21st if we want additional revisions. We do believe this is a feasible approach to incorporate these changes and make the updates effective by June 30 of this year, as required by the permit. Following adoption, AHBL will provide staff training on the changes. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Madam Mayor for any questions.
Great. Thanks, Audrey and Stephanie. Council, any questions? Apparently you guys covered every base because there's no questions. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that timeline too. That kind of, I'm a very visual person, so seeing the timeline out to June is very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we are moving right through. We are on council reports and city manager reports. Councilmember Lamb has provided a written report. I also have a written report. Of note, on my written report, it said I had a North End Mayor's meeting. That actually did not occur today. So nothing to report out there. So I'm just going to go in the order that I see you on my screen. And if you have a report, go ahead. Councilmember Howe, anything? Councilmember Treen?
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Clark?
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Lamb, anything addition that you wanted to add to your report?
No.
Councilmember Moran?
Nope.
All right, that's easy. Mr. City Manager.
Excuse me, this is the city clerk.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a statement that for the record, that Councilmember Karen Moran was present at the beginning of the meeting. She just had connection issues. I'd sent her a new link, and she was having difficulties connecting with that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks, Theta.
Thank you.
Okay, now Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening, Council and community. I offer the following as a brief summary of the past few weeks with the impacts of the snow and ice storm and trash service interruptions that all began on around December 25th through January 5th. The snow and ice event that plagued the region started on Saturday, December 25th, Christmas Day. Republic Services, due to their internal policies related to snow and ice on neighboring streets, were not able to consistently provide service between December 21st and January 21st, or January 5th, 2022. Drop-box sites within Sammamish were provided by Republic Services at 2 different locations on the following dates. We had Beaver Lake Park on January 5th and 6th, and East Sammamish Park on January 5th. On Thursday, January 6th, Republic Services indicated they were back to being able to have their trucks provide services in the neighborhoods on their normal scheduled days. On the work stoppage issue, which began January 24th through January 14th, just starting to catch up, and on Wednesday, January 12th, the city was informed that Republic Services was experiencing a work stoppage in the Puget Sound region due to a strike that was occurring in San Diego. Local Republic Services union staff chose not to cross picket lines. The work stoppage in the Puget Sound affected numerous cities, including Kent, North Bend, Bellevue, Covington, and Sammamish. Since picket lines could not be crossed, Republic Services was not able to coordinate a time and location for drop-off sites in the city of Sammamish. In review of the data provided by Republic Services, it appears that as of Saturday, January 15th, 2022, the Monday and Tuesday routes were back to normal. The Wednesday route and a few on the Tuesday route had approximately 688 customers whose trash was not picked up for about 3 to 4 weeks, and Thursday and Friday were behind 1 week. As a measure of mitigation, Republic Services opened their site in Bellevue to Sammamish customers on Sunday, January 16th, 2022, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Republic Services reported that 267 customers from Sammamish took advantage of this opportunity. On January 17th, 2022, Republic Services announced they were back in business and plan to service the daily routes in Sammamish this week. On next steps, city staff is working with Republic and communicating information to the public as soon as we have it regarding credits per the contract we have with Republic. There are storm reimbursement clause in our contract. The city is also pursuing the fines and forfeitures per the contract for fall under labor disputes. We're working on refining the messages with some pre-event alerts and notifications of potential waste collection disruptions, actions to take, and options for waste disposal. We're also looking at joint incident communications and ICS training for our staff. So in summary, Sammamish citizens and staff Sammamish staff will be conducting a self-assessment and refining plans should we face this challenge again in the future. Our internal response and recovery procedures are now being reviewed and refined, and our messaging is being reviewed so that we can better advise and direct our community with pertinent information depending on the situation. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I appreciate that report out. I know we had several residents that were very frustrated, understandably, but appreciate the background information for their benefit and ours. Okay, Council. Next, we have an executive session. This is to evaluate complaints brought against a public employee pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101F and potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I.
Can we have a break first?
Yes, I think that would certainly be appropriate. But before we go on break, let's make sure that we kind of let the public know how long we think we're going to be there. Because there are several items, I think we may be in there for at least an hour. So I think it's 8 o'clock right now. Let's give everyone at least 5 minutes for a break. So let's say that we'll be back out here by 9:05, and if not, we'll need to extend that executive session. Councilmember Howe, did you have a question?
Just a quick question. And actually, if we could just thank the people who applied to the commissions and did not get those slots. I just wanted to make a statement on the record that thank you for applying, and please do that again. And there are other organizations that are based in Sammamish that would love to have your talent. So don't give up. Please try again, because it was a delight to interview all of you.
Thank you, Councilmember Howe. Appreciate you recognizing them. Okay, Council, we'll be back out here at 9:05. We'll see you in executive session in about 5 minutes.
Mayor Melcha, may I make a motion?
You may.
I would like to move that we have a special meeting next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. for an executive session to cover specifically RCW 42.30.110-1F.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 4-2, we will have a special meeting next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m.
Please note, I will not be there. I'll be on medical leave.
Oh, Karen, shoot, I'm sorry.
We will be sure to have someone make a motion for an excused absence. Okay, I don't have anything else unless anyone else has anything for the good of the order. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by a vote of 6-0, we are adjourned. Thanks, council.
Good night.
Evening.
Night.
Night.